Welcome, everyone. I'm Justin Silverman of the New England First Amendment Coalition. Thank you for joining us for another 30-minute skills. Today's presentation is supported in part by the estate of Gloria Negri. Gloria Negri, the late Gloria Negri, was a trailblazing journalist at the Boston Globe for more than 50 years. And I encourage everyone to learn more about Gloria as well as our other supporters at nefac.org/supporters. Also, a reminder, links to all of our 30-minute skills are available at nefac.org, as well as on our YouTube channel, 5 Freedoms. Lessons include data cleaning, privacy law, Microsoft Excel basics, how to diversify sources, and how to protect yourself as a journalist, among many other topics. I also encourage everyone to visit nefac.org and view our growing list of upcoming presentations and events focused on the First Amendment and journalism. Nearly all of them are free and open to the public, so please check them out and consider joining us. Today, we'll be discussing AI tools that journalists and others can use to help strengthen their reporting, storytelling, and other research. We have a lot to cover and not a lot of time, so let's get started. Retha, all yours.
All right. Hi, good morning or good afternoon there in New England. I'm here in sunny Arizona. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about a really important subject. And that subject is artificial intelligence. This is the year of AI, which will, of course, change so much of what we all do. And I just want to go over some of the tools that I use for storytelling and a few on reporting. There's a lot about AI, and we don't have time to get into general artificial intelligence as opposed to narrow. So we're just going to focus on some storytelling tools that I have used in the last year and why I use those. So I wanted to focus in on all the things about AI, just the skills that can help your storytelling. A little bit about me. So I was a traditional journalist back at the Washington Post. But then in 1995, I went over to the internet side and helped put together the site that became WashingtonPost.com. I was the local editor, and as such, I had a lot to do because people had already read the newspaper that day. So I created all kinds of interactive content, such as the state back then, fell in love with that, and I've been doing it ever since. I was hired a few years later to be the vice president of Black Entertainment Television and to start BET.com. And then 16 years ago, I came out to Arizona to be the innovation lab director at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism. And now I'm the director of innovation for the school. And I'm on the provost AI committees and, doing a whole lot of stuff and trying to get people up to speed. Now, we know that AI will be disruptive in our industry as well as a whole lot of other industries, but I want to focus on the skills that are really attainable. At the New Media Innovation Lab at the Cronkite School that I've been running for 16 years, we've for a very long time used immersive media to supplement journalism and storytelling. And just as with the Washington Post and New York Times, USA Today, and other major media outlets, we've been experimenting for years with interactive and immersive media. From using AR extreme weather, just like the Weather Channel does, except for I created a way to do it for less cost and to make it geolocated. Won a grant from NAB on that. To AR maps to tell people what's in their neighborhood, to news games and simulations. The bottom line is not that I'm a genius, it's just that I am unafraid of the technology. I'm not going to blow anything up. And I want to encourage you to believe in yourselves that you can master this. My students come into the lab at the beginning of a semester not knowing much of any of this. And by the end of the semester, 15 weeks, they're producing really amazing content. And I'll show you some of that in a minute. So we take our inspiration from some of the major news organizations that, of course, have much more money than we do, and whole division like the New York Times R&D or Washington Post. But we take our inspiration, we look at what they're doing as well as what I'm interested in and the students are interested in to create content. I love this Tulsa race massacre mapping that they put together a few years ago, where they recreated the neighborhood that was attacked back in 1921 and destroyed, and all these people were killed, and more than 1,200 homes were burnt down. I took inspiration from that. I always also take inspiration, for example, from USA Today. They did a great 1619 project where they actually went over to West Africa and they were able to recreate this interactive view of a slave ship. And from the journals and all their research, they were able to recreate what that experience was like. So I take inspiration from that, but I also take inspiration from some of you who are a little bit older might remember Walter Cronkite's You Are There. And this was back in the 50s and 60s where Walter Cronkite would do a simulation to recreate an event. And I'm not going to play this, but this one is the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And then he would have a reporter go back and talk to Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin as they come out, step outside of the deliberations and get their opinions, just like they would if they were covering Washington, D.C. So I definitely took inspiration from that. I'm just going to skip ahead here. So what we would do is we look at that and say, how can we do this in a cheaper way? So for example, using old insurance maps and some other things, we would manually extrude, for example, this building, which is the headquarters of the Union General at Fort Monroe in Virginia at the start of the Civil War. I did that with a contract 3D designer and a contract developer, and we were able to do that. We also used those same type of skills to recreate our first sort of planned community here in Phoenix. It was the first mid-modern, like the Levittown. Again, use a contract 3D designer, had 5 students and a very frustrated developer who's like, why are you always coming up with this stuff? But, you know, had to do it. But budgets are tight. And fortunately, after that developer moved on, AI came along just a couple months later. And the explosion of all these tools mean that we can do so much more ourselves. And I self-taught myself how to do all the stuff that I'm going to show you. We use generative AI images based on old photos that we've cleaned up in AI. We generate images to tell stories that would have been difficult to do without a 3D designer or developers previously. We've been able to create scenes in days rather than months. We generate voices that can read scripts based on research. And we use AI to make old text, such as 250-year-old journals or census records or whatever else readable. So these are some of the ways, the practical ways that we use AI to help us tell these stories and bring history or scenes or journalism alive for a whole generation of people who like interactive content. So this is a process that we've been working on, a project around the American Revolution, because of course in 2026 is the 250th anniversary of the founding of our country. And so we've been telling all these stories of what I call ordinary revolutionists, people who just stepped up and did something, but we don't know their names many times. We've reached out to genealogy associations, family historians, people who are the genealogists within their group to tell all these amazing stories. And we've heard quite a few, especially from New England, but also down in Virginia, Georgia, and South Carolina. And this is an example of our process where there's a guy, he was a pastor, William Tennant. We didn't have any visuals of him, but we had his journals. We had a lot of information, but we did have an old photo of an old original painting of his grandfather. And that's the first one that you see on the left. So we got that. We use AI to in Photoshop using neural filters, and you have to kind of download this in the 2024 version of Photoshop in beta to restore that original image so we had more clarity. And then we ran that through an AI image generator to get this photo that you see on the right. So that's a generated image based on what his grandfather looked like. Best we could do. They didn't have photography back there, so that's how we did it. And then what we'll do is we'll take that and we animate that again using a program that I'll discuss in a moment, so we can make a portrait of William Tennant III. We use another program called 11 Labs to, again, based on this guy's own writings and journals, to kind of bring him alive so that students and other people who are interested in the American Revolution can get a sense of some of these ordinary revolutionists. And I'm going to go ahead and play that.
My name is William Tennant III. I am a Presbyterian Reverend from South Carolina, known as the Firebrand Parson for the way in which I preach, animated and demonstrative. With tensions growing between the colonies and the British Crown in the 1770s, I was tasked in 1775 with informing the people of South Carolina's dangerous rural backcountry of growing dissent against the crown.
Okay, I'm going to stop that. And then what this one student who, again, learning it from scratch was able to do is create this interactive scene. Now we have bots in the photo right now or in this interactive scene because we're still working on the process to create very good looking avatars that won't cost a ton of money and that are lightweight, that people can look at on their phone or on their desktop without having to put on a headset necessarily or look at it with a console.
My name is William Tennant III.
Go ahead and move on here. But this scene was created by the student. He did a good job putting in fog, making all the terrain here, having quests so people could learn more about what the conditions were like and the fact that South Carolina was a hotbed of loyalist sentiment. So again, moving on. So I said we had research. So we were able to get this guy's journals that were online, but it's in Old English and it's very hard to read. So if you look at this writing, it was just impossible. And if you've ever gone through old census records or other records, you know how hard that is. But using a company called Transcribus, we were able to upload this, clean it up so that we could read it and then have a better interface. So the way we did that is, and you can do it yourself, is find old or handwritten documents, try going to the American Revolution pension records, or maybe genealogy records in your own family, download those either as a JPEG or a PDF, upload those in Transcribus. You can create an account or just do it on the homepage just to test it. Upload your documents in about 3 to 5 minutes. They'll be transcribed so you can easily read those and then clear it up. I just did this the other day. You see where it has the state of Delaware, Sussex County. Just go in and clean it up a little bit, but you can go ahead and read that. So that's a lot of fun. The other thing that we do quite often when we're creating these scenes is I can do all this stuff myself, but being a busy professor, being on a bunch of committees, working, trying to innovate the curriculum, I might not have time. And so one of the things that's really helpful when you want to do interactive storytelling is, as the originator, you might have a story in your head or a scene that you want to create. So I use generative AI to help me create a storyboard. Storyboards are really, really important. And if you've worked with a graphic designer, or if you've worked with a videographer or a documentary maker, you know how important it is to storyboard things. But I can go into Midjourney, which is the generative AI of choice that I like a lot. Now it was free at one point, but now it costs money. But there are a ton of others that you can use, and I'll get into some of the resources in a moment. And I can imagine or create all the different scenes I want to have in this, 2-scene reenactment. So we have the infirmary where there were soldiers sick at Valley Forge, and so many of them had disease, but others, their feet were frostbitten and torn up because they didn't have shoes. Now, we got used to calling Washington George. So George, this is a second shot of where he's pleading to the Continental government for boots and other supplies. And he would every few days have to write and plead for boots and supplies. The problem was the supply side. Now, how do you make supply side economics sexy? Well, this is an example of where one guy, stood up, raised his hand and said, I can figure this out. This is an excerpt from a letter that George sent to the Continental Army back on December 23rd, 1777. By the way, I had a couple of relatives back in Valley Forge, free men during that time. Then I have a medium shot of William Henry, who is the guy who was a gun maker at one point, and then he had aspirations like Hamilton to rise up in his station and do other things. Then we have a shot of where he put together this whole system of hiders and cobblers and other people so that he was able to produce a steady flow of boots, which of course helped to win the revolution. And what we do is we put all of this, and I've created what I call the Hall of Ordinary Revolutionists. And I've created this hall, whereas as you go through this hall, you can see all these extraordinary stories of different people, and you can actually portal into scenes. And if I click on this, it should go to the live one right quick. And this is just the vehicle that we're using. And we're working with Arizona PBS and all of PBS to support the Ken Burns film that'll come out in September of 2025. So you can walk down this hall and you can, visit all these stories. There's William Tennant, there's Oliver Brown, there's Hannah Till. There's just so many people that you can get a sense of what's going on. Let me close that down and go back to my presentation here. So I did most of that for like under $2,000, whereas a few years ago, by the time I hired the developer and the 3D artist and the blah, 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 it would be $15,000 or $16,000 to do a similar type of a thing. Now, I've only got 3 more minutes before there's time for Q&A. So I wanted to go over some of the resources that I use. I talk a lot about, YouTube University, and literally all of this is self-taught, looking at videos, and they might be doing videos on how to make a game or how to make a zombie game or something like that. But I take their instruction on how to do all of this, and I think about how I can repurpose that for journalism. So as I mentioned with art generation, I love Midjourney. And I use it all the time, but there are others that are out there, whether it's Leonardo.ai, Adobe Firefly, which is updated versions of Adobe. If you update from 2019 to 2023 or 24, you should be able to get all of this. Stable Diffusion, so many more. One of my favorite sites is a site called futuretools.io, which is continuously listing new AI tools and platforms that come out. People can upgrade them, so you can just get the better ones. You can figure out if it's free, freemium, or you might have to pay. They all start out as free or freemium, and then they put the firewall or the paywall down, and some of them are worth it. If you need quick video creation, I find that Kaiber is a really good one that doesn't cost a whole lot of money, that you can upload images or you can upload video, and it can, turn them into these really cool animations for you. It only takes a few minutes. Even if you do $5 a month, you get a whole bunch of credits that you can use, and that can enhance your storytelling there. I mentioned Transcribus, which does the updating, or it does the translation of old text or clean it up so you can read it. Again, if you go to Adobe Photoshop 2024 beta version and you add in your neural filters, you can take old photos and clean those up or colorize them. 11 Labs is something that I use for voice creation. We don't make up things. We try to do our research and find journals or speeches or books written about it, so we can bring those characters. And we can also do portrait animation, and it's really easy. Reach.love is something that was created by one of my colleagues, Nani de la Pina. I'm sure some of you know about her. Really easy to create immersive scenes. Spatial.io is what I use to create the Hall of Ordinary Revolutionists, as well as some of these scenes that the students did. Reality Composer, you can do it on your phone if you want to try. Artificial intelligence, augmented reality, super easy. You can make 3D elements to put in your scene. Let's say you need a pot or something from the 18th century. You can make that in Luma AI. Claude AI is something that you can use. It's a production tool, but I was thinking about the Jeffrey Epstein documents that came out yesterday. That's something that you can take long PDFs and files, upload those, and it can summarize them for you, which is really helpful if you're on deadline. Last thing that I would say is, I know we're really concerned about jobs being lost, and I know that that will happen, particularly around production. But I just want to say that while I can and do use all of these programs and many more to create all manner of content, I really prefer to hire a smart designer who can use these technologies for the same reasons I hire a CPA to do my taxes, rather than me trying to do them on TurboTax. journalists really should see these productivity tools as a plus rather than an existential threat. Yes, jobs will be lost, but let's encourage young people that we mentor and yourselves to try some of this because it's really not that difficult.
Thanks, Ruth. A couple of questions, actually. First, could you direct us to any local newsrooms that are using AI very effectively, or are there any specific projects that we can research on our own and look into that really display, all of the uses for these resources that you're sharing today?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know what all these other places are using, but for example, if you go to the New York Times R&D, their research and development lab, they are usually really transparent about how they create the things that they do. For example, if they're doing photogrammetry and they go into Chinatown and take thousands of photos and then they, piece them all together so you can walk through Chinatown and then use different programs to see what it looked like back in the 1920s versus now. The Washington Post has been using AI for many, many years to write certain database stories, and they've been in that. And Gannett has, experimented. Of course, they've had some missteps in terms of having AI write stories for them, and I wouldn't advise that right now because it's still really glitchy. But there's a new tool that we'll be experimenting with this year in our newsroom at Cronkite. Is called Nota, N-O-T-A, and it's a production tool that can help if you're on WordPress, especially for smaller companies, to be able to write those headlines, get those social media posts ready, or to suggest photos, either the photos that your staff reporters take, or that maybe it's one from like a Getty or a Shutterstock. So there's so many out there that not all of the newsrooms are saying what they're using, but we're encouraging that all of the content be labeled AI. The Associated Press, I was on a conference panel with them, and they said that they're going to be labeling everything, and they're experimenting with integrating AI into their work.
I'm glad you brought that up, because my next question is just about best practices. We have a number of journalists, newsrooms, this technology entirely new to them, and they're going to take all of these suggestions that you're giving, and they're going to start to dip their toes into AI and start experimenting with all of these tools. Is there a list of best practices or some other resources that you could share or point us to that would make sure that we're using this technology in a ethical, responsible way?
I don't have a list per se, but I know, again, the Associated Press has talked about labeling. I know some of the discussions over the summer and various forums has been, if you're using a generated image as your image, then in the cut line, instead of saying, this is a photo or graphic created by you, it would say created through AI. And I think just being transparent, even if you're doing a data story, a weather story, and you're using one of these older platforms to write that, I think we should disclose that that's where we got it from. With simulations and other things in your introductory, of course, you want to say how you created that. I mean, maybe most of us know that photography wasn't around in the 1770s. Some people might not know that. And it's okay to say how we put this together. And I think that's something that should go on any package. When all of this is ready, the end of this summer, and we have it ready to support PBS and Ken Burns's film, we'll say how we did everything. And that's what the New York Times has been doing for many years.
Great. Yeah, it goes to that transparency and making sure there's the trust that exists, between the newsrooms and their audiences. A couple other questions before we wrap up. I know we only have a few more minutes, but one question regarding AI tools that can create a summary of audio recordings, attending a long meeting, going to a government meeting, an open meeting perhaps. You're there recording everything. Are there any tools that you know of off the top of your head that would allow us to take that recording and then have it transcribed, or is that technology still a little ways off?
Oh, I'm sure it's there, and I'm going to go over to future tools right quick, see what's in here. And this guy, he's a YouTuber who kind of, tries to stay up on everything. So, summarize audio files. See if what we get here. Okay. So nothing. Let's just say audio transcribing. And if we don't see it here, I'll definitely, look around. Okay. Hopefully I'm signed in. Okay. But what he normally does is he has a list of everything, and you can go in and see copywriting, speech to text, podcasting, voice modulation, video editing. I'll go through this and see if I can find something, but Future Tools is just like a really good resource. And as I said, people will upvote the better ones. He gives you a little summary of it and how it works. And I'm sure there are some out there. I just can't think of any off the top. I'm sorry.
No, that's great. That's a great resource, great website. And again, I'll provide links to all of these resources and that website in the notes, the recording of this lesson. Another question here as well, getting away from the idea of using AI for storytelling and more just to save time and news gathering. Are there any tools that you know of that could help a reporter, for example, sift through public records or databases, or where, if there are those tools, where can we find them? Where should we start?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of if you have documents, if you have PDFs, you get a data dump on deadline. Again, being able to use some of these tools like Claude, and even you can build a model off of a GPT-4, so they can very quickly go through and kind of summarize stuff for you. Otter is one that, for example, if you turn on Otter on this webinar, it's going to take notes for you, and then you can go back through it. Even Adobe now with Premiere has a way that you can go in and edit out all the ums and the uhs and all that stuff when you're editing a piece of video. And so that's really, really helpful, instead of trying to slice out every little thing so that it's again smooth. So there's so many tools out there that I really am starting to, have a hard time keeping up with it all. There are tools that'll help you with video generation as well, with animation, Pika, Runway, just so many out there that I have to find time just to test the ones that I think would work for me, and free for my students, or low cost for my students, so that we can do all of that. But from a production standpoint, that's huge. ChatGPT, all the OpenAI, some of the Stable Diffusion stuff, look in there and see what it is that you're looking to do, and just master, even if it's just that one for right now, so it'll help speed up your production. But Hey Nada is the one that I talked about, Hey Nada, NOTA, and it was created by former content management officials and technologies at the LA Times. So very journalist friendly in terms of speeding up your production. You've written something, it'll give you 3 headlines. You can accept one, or you can like one and kind of like it and then edit the headline, but that's going to save you right there. Write those social media posts so you can get it out there and let people know what you've created.
Great. And in the interest of time, if there is just one tool that we can all leave this session with and go experiment with, is that the one, or are there others that you think are equally as accessible and useful if we only have time to focus in on one AI tool?
Oh my God. I would say for storytelling, I would use something like Runway or Pika Labs, or one of those, to create short videos, because a lot of us who came from a print background, we don't know much of that. And if we just want to put together something to an explainer video, how a tsunami works, I'm going to be teaching that to my students in a little bit, how, earthquake or volcano erupts, you can use one of those to create a really good explainer. So, and that's what journalists do really well.
Great. Well, thank you, Aretha. I appreciate all of this. This is so helpful. And to everyone, again, links to all the sites Aretha mentioned will be shared in the video notes of this lesson. You can find those links, as well as many other 30-minute skills, all at newsroom.org/30-minute skills. So again, many thanks everyone for joining us today. If you found today's class helpful to your work in any way, please consider becoming a sustaining member of NEFAC at nefac.org/join. Your annual support is what helps us provide classes like this one. Thank you again. We'll see you next month for our next 30-minute skills. Take care.
Bye, thank you guys.